Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. We have Evolve's electrical customer update and Q&A webinar. I am joined today by some of our amazing Evolve product experts, including Adam Heon, Jason Earl, and Andrew Somerville, our product managers. We've also got on the line Alex Siebert, Customer Success Manager, and Amber Zinke, Director of Pre-Sales and Customer Success. We are all here today to make sure you guys are getting the most out of your Evolve product. And with that, I am passing things off to Adam Heon, who is going to give you guys the latest features in the 6.2 update. Adam, feel free to take it away whenever you're ready.
Great, thanks, Marina. Share my screen here. Okay, so I'm going to go through the 6.2 update. Hopefully everybody got the notifications that we released that update. You can find the installers on our downloads page here, and the release notes will pop up with that link there. So I'm going to go through basically line by line through the release notes here. As I get through, I'll probably spend a little more time on the new features, update, the improvements here. I probably skim through some of them, but just mention what they do. But please feel free to post any questions while I'm going through this, and I'll do my best to answer them as we're getting through the update. One thing also worth noting is we did do an update to the sample files. So for those who don't know, within the foresight.evolve.mep website, the same site for our licensing, there's an admin module. Basically, if you're not a company admin, you won't see it. So you just have to reach out to them to get this. But if you do have it, you go to company properties here on the left, and then there's the download link there. I will be adding a timestamp to this, so then you can kind of start seeing when these things are getting updated. And I'll try to also send out notifications when we do it. But I'm going to be using this sample model that's here. So everything that I do and show, you could pretty much open this up and follow along and try yourself. So I'm going to pull this off to the side, and I'm going to kind of go down this these release notes here. All right, let me just pull open a view. All right, I guess top one on the list, concentric bends. So I can show that one real quick. Let me just go to a floor plan here. Where do I want to go? Let's go here. So the concept should be pretty self-explanatory. Basically, creating expanded radiuses on the bends. So, for example, let me do something like this. Let me make sure these are okay. So the Stub 90 is a V12 family, so we had to version it and upgrade it. And basically what that update does is just adds a checkbox to the family so that we can detect when the radius has been overridden and when it's not. So you certainly don't have to use this updated Stub 90 family, but in order to use the concentric bend feature itself, as it's noted here, it requires a V12 or higher, because we'll keep that in all the other families that get upgraded. The feature itself is pretty easy. Click the button, select your Stub 90s, hit finish, and you get concentric radius. Not much. You can continue to use the other optimization tools after there, but basically what you'll get is a calculated radius that just expands out based on the spacing of the conduits. You should be able to select these and hit reset, oops, sorry, reset, select them, and it'll put them back to normal. So easy feature. I know this has come up a few times over the year or so, got that in there. All right, the next one. So with 6.0, we had this find elements utility that we threw in there, which gives you the ability to kind of search through your model and find things. One of the enhancements we've done is we've added that functionality to our different manager windows. So I'll pull up Prefab Manager, for example. You'll notice there's now the little locate icon up here. What this allows you to do is make a selection from the grid. You'll select the button and it'll make the selection in your view, and it'll select the item. You'll find this feature in a few areas. Location Manager will have it. The Point Manager will have it. Basically, wherever there's going to be a grid with some data about it, some data representing some model element where it makes sense, you'll have this feature to quickly find things. So that's a nice little enhancement there. The other thing you'll notice, let me go to reports, for example, here. I'm going to go through this. Hopefully we have some time at the end. The sample model, we've updated a bunch of reports in there. And I want to show off a few of them, some really great enhancements to these things. But one of the things you'll notice is our export icon has changed in all of our tools. It actually changed functionality, so it's not just we're changing icons. It's a totally different function. But the idea behind this new exporting function is to basically be able to grab connected configurations and bring them all out together. So, for example, if I select one of, well, let me select one that matters. Wire fill report. So, for example, the wire fill report requires a data table. So, and a profile as well with it. So if the old way, you'd have to export all three of these things individually and make sure you bring them all in correctly together, or for each feature in order for it to properly function. So this basically just automatically selects dependent configurations. So reports is a good example because it can be pretty layered with profiles, tables, and whatnot. So it allows you to basically grab everything in once, send it out as an export, and then you can import it and it'll bring all of these things together. You can also export everything out and then selectively import as well. So it's just a nice way, especially for things like this where, ideally you have this stuff set up in your template, so you're not really having to do this much, but obviously updates come out and you want to do things in existing projects. So the ability to kind of take these configurations out of one model, put them into another is needed, and this just makes it a little more useful. And again, you'll see this this icon throughout any of our utilities or things that have configurations for them. All right, the next feature is our seismic supports. Let me see if I can go down to a more isolated view here. So the feature itself, you'll find up in the ribbon to place a support. Basically, it's going to work on our trapeze families. Once you have it selected, what do I have in here? Let me shut off my links because I can't see what I'm doing. There we go. All right, so when you click the button, you basically will be able to select the trapeze hanger. So you can select the ones you want. So I'll select this one and select one over here. The UI is pretty straightforward. Select your family. Currently, we just shipped with some generic seismic support family, which I'll go over. We will be adding different assemblies for this and enhancing them. So at that given time, you'll have more family and type options. You can certainly, if you're familiar with modifying families and editing them, you can certainly play around with it. There's take ours as a baseline example, make your own. There's not too much to it from a family perspective, at least the current one that's in there. If it's not loaded in your project, you can use the load default, which basically pulls in the support from the family browser. And then you have basically your attachment options and your angle here, and then what it attaches to over in your options menu. So you have two options for where it positions the support on the trapeze itself, whether it connects it to the rod or to edge of strut. So I'm just going to hit center of rod here. And then you have two options for angles. So if you hover over these, you get some other images. The first angle is from your, looking at it from a profile standpoint, right? Just the pitch of the cable or support itself. The second angle is looking more of a plan view in a scenario where you actually have two supports that are kind of rotated around the edge or around the rod. Well, this is one of the families we'll end up building out as more of a single assembly to do this. The current family really, I mean, it will still rotate like this, but most cases you're probably using multiple supports, so it makes sense to have a special family for this. So the features are there to use, but it may not be very applicable to the family we have right now. So once you've selected those two things, you can go to your options, and this is going to be very similar to placing a trapeze. Same options here. I'll do distance below level. And then from there, I just hit OK, and you'll see the seismic supports will come into the hangers themselves. So it's going to place a family instance, one on each side. Now, we're not doing any clash adjustment or anything like that. So we're not clashing the support at an angle. But what you can do is modify kind of how this thing's positioned. So the tool itself is really like a tool that just places the support and then does some calculations into the family. So the family is really kind of driving the whole thing. Let's just say you have this support here and you need to pitch it down or something or up. You can come to the angle. There's your angle 1, 2 parameters. You can just manually punch in these values. You know, the attachment point right here is just going to be your structure elevation. So if you needed it to go up or down, you could always just change that value and the thing's going to go up. It's going to maintain that angle and extend. And then your rest of your options for your family would be pretty similar to some of our other families. You get the zone of influence around the end of the rod. I just have it turned off in my visibility graphics. That's adjustable. And then of course, you actually have the layout points at the tips where they attach to the structure. So you can utilize this just like you use our other hanger families and things like that. Here, I'll go to a top view and show that the other angle. So this other angle does work. But again, we'll probably build out a family that is more designed to do this. But if you needed to adjust it, you certainly can do that. All right. So that's seismic supports. The next feature that's new is another utility. So the export utility here, the purpose of this tool is to basically be able to create a rule or a series of rules to make it faster to bulk export views or sheets out of your project. So typically what we're seeing is, depending on the project, if you're using BIM 360 or not, oftentimes you have to export, your series of 3D views as NWCs and or DWGs, but you're also potentially exporting out a bunch of sheets as well. So this does a couple of different things as we get through it. Again, this is a project-based utility. So what I'll walk through is available in this model. And essentially you could set this up if you have certain standards in place as part of your template and not really have to come in here and configure this. You could really just open this up and click the button. That's the intent. But I'll show how it kind of works. So when you're first on this, this first tab here, you have two grids here. The one on the right is basically a listing of all your sheets and views in your project, and it allows you to manually select what you want to use. The grid on the left is where you can define element filters. So the element filter, as I open this one up, this one's going to be specific for views. So you'll see I have my views selected, and my condition is my view name contains the word export. So you'll see over on the left here, I have a series of views with the word export in them, so I can do that. Another option too is if maybe your standard is not naming things with the word export, and maybe you do it by browser category. You could certainly use the browser category as a parameter to define what gets exported. What's nice about this is I don't have to come in here. If I add, for example, I have 0, 1, and 2. Well, if I add level 3, level 4, level 5, I don't have to come in here and make updates to this, because as I add new views, as long as this condition is met, it's going to bring them in. So again, the idea would be I can just kind of come in here and click the button and not worry about how it's configured. The second element filter here is for sheets. So this is an example where I'm using browser category to find my sheets. I'll close out of this and just scroll down so you kind of see what I'm dealing with in this project here. Let me pop this back up. All right, so here I'm using an OR statement. If you're in the element filter, you can right click and say convert. This can go back to an and, but I did an OR statement because what I want are this parameter, either field or shop. So you'll see I have a miscellaneous category, then I have field, and then I have shop. So I'm filtering out this one drawing and just getting whatever falls into these buckets. So the element filter is basically the rule that's defining what views, what sheets do I want to grab. You can certainly mix and match. So I could come in here and grab additional views and include it with these, or I could turn off these element filters and just use this. So it's a mix and match, use one, use both, however you want to do it. So once you have your element filters defined and or your view selected, you can go to the next tab. So the next tab defines your destination. You have two parts to this. You got your naming convention. How do you want your sheets named? How do you want your views named? We defaulted it to a pretty standard sheet number, sheet name, or type and view name. You can also append file names or dates and times to the file name. The second part here is really where you're telling it where to send this. What folder do you want to send these things to? So I'm going to walk through a couple of options here. So let's say you want to send everything to just one folder. So I could come in here, I'll select my folder as my output, my location. I could just send it to, let's say, my desktop, and I'll send it to my EE folder here. From there, I just define my format. So in this case, I want a DWG. If I want to send all my views or all my sheets as PDFs as well, I would just make another row and change the format. So each row defines the location the folder goes to and the format of the file. So what I have here, and you'll see this with this views example. So I have DWG and NWC here going to the same place. What you also see is there's a source filter here, which is another element filter. And the reason for this is, and I have an example set up here, is let's just say uh, you have a certain folder structure where field drawings go and another folder structure where shop or where the drawings for prefab go. What you can do is use this element filter to kind of deviate those outputs. So I'll open this up, and basically what you see is instead of listing both categories, I'm just breaking it apart. So this specific filter is browser category equal to field, and this one browser category equals to shop. And the folders you'll see are different here, field and shop. So this just creates a way to, again, split the views and sheets into multiple folders. Uh, so this is actually set up to go into your C temp folder. So again, you could actually use this out of the box and run the utility. So from here, you can click on the preview tab. This is just going to display kind of, what it is you have selected. You see there's my export views. There's my sheets that's in the filter. And again, if I want to come in here and select another view, if I go to preview, you'll see that view shows up. So again, you can mix and match this. The last tab is an options tab, which just goes over all your standard formatting settings. One thing to notice is PDFs are only supported in 22 and 23. So just take note of that. But these are going to be your standard Revit uh, export settings that you have access to. So once it's all configured, it's just a click of the button and run it. What I'll do is, I don't think I have it, my Navis installer. So I'll just run these two as an example. Run the export. Let me pull up a IC drive temp folder as that's going through. So these are the folders that I made. Here's field. These should be pulling in. Might be doing shop first. Yeah. So these are populating in here. Then field will show up. There's field drawings coming in there. So pretty straightforward example here. If anybody hasn't seen our 360 sync tool, this really complements that tool really well. What that tool will do is basically it synchronizes, a local set of files, and it integrates with all the different share file systems that are out there. So it's a great tool, but this really could automate that even more by automating how these views get sent to your network folders, and then they could get dispersed from there. So something worth checking out. Let this process through. All right, while that's loading, I'm just gonna look at what's coming up next. All right. All right, that's done. All right, so that's the tool. Again, the idea would be this is, I went through the whole setup. This could be pre-set up. It's a set it and forget it. Open the tool, click run export, and you should be good to go. Within the place couplings or add remove unions tool, there's now a delete function, which basically runs through. So here, I'll just draw something off to the side. Whoops, a little too high there, or a little too low. Where am I? Or I'm off view. Hold on. There we go. Just a little bit off view there. So if I place my couplings, I'll just do what have you, coupling that out. I got two whole couplings. Now I can come into here, say delete, again, entire path, change of direction, and delete them out. So this will work. I mean, I just did it on one run, but this will work on the selection you make, the series of runs and things like that. So just a quick way to remove couplings if you need to. The family browser now has a load favorites button. So if you're utilizing the favorites where you can kind of just click through and add different families to your favorites, now you can kind of bulk load them all in one. So the idea would be, new projects. Here's the dozen families that I always want to bring in, set them as your favorites, start the new project, load them in, and you're off and running. So another small little enhancement, but I think a good one there. All right, next one is on sleeves. So let me go to a view here. Oh, here, I'll do something over here. So the sleeve feature previously only worked with linked, or only worked against hosted objects. So it actually had to have a wall, whether it was host linked or not linked. And then obviously the feedback we got was, well, sometimes we're working DWG backgrounds, we don't have a wall, but we need to place a sleeve. So now when you open up the place sleeve option button there, I'll select my sleeve. You'll now see there's a checkbox that says do not require a host. So I can check that. You'll notice that the length changes from an additional length to a total length, because obviously we're not calculating length up a wall because there's no wall there. You're just going to place it where you want it. So you have to make sure you enter the actual length you want. So check the box, add your length and width, hit OK. Click where you want the sleeve, and it goes where you click. So nice little enhancement there for quickly putting sleeves in. The last one on the new features is inside of bend settings here, or smart bends. There's refresh options. So let's just say you started modeling and you decided to change a bender spec. You wanted to go from, what have you, an 855 to an 854 or something. Or you came in here and you tweaked some of the measurements here. These refresh buttons will now recalculate the bend information for the bends. So it's not going to change geometry because these things are not necessarily changing geometry, or I guess other than radius, but the actual bend information will get updated. So that's there. All right. So now going through some of the improvements that you'll notice. The first one is to our system families button. This was previously 4 or 5 buttons. Basically, we just consolidated the buttons into a single UI. Nothing else has changed as far as functionality goes. The idea behind this tool anyway is to kind of on-demand load your system families into your project. So really at the start of a new project, you're kind of coming in here and clicking through the ones you want to use and loading them in. And you could do this at any time, but this is not a UI you're necessarily coming to a lot. So it's just kind of consolidated and cleaned up there. All right, next one is with points. So we made a couple of enhancements here. One of the things that came up quite often was creating custom point types. So what people would want to do, I did one right here, is I'll create a point type. Basically, I'll make a new one for now. So I create my new point file. You always could create these, which is fine. You could come in, place them, not a problem. But placing them through the project browser doesn't auto number them like our our place point does. So now whenever you create points there and you open up the create points dialog, you'll see the points show up. So now I can actually use this tool with custom family types, and it will place them and number them, just like everything else does. That also shows up when you're doing import points. So if I was coming in here and importing points into my model and I wanted to use an import point type, I could create that and select it here. So basically any type, any family type you want to create, you can and utilize in our tools. The other thing that was modified here is previously you couldn't export points when there were error conditions within the grid itself. So even though, let's just say these points I wanted out, there were, because of this error state, I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd have to make sure these get numbered. Now, as long as you are not selecting a row that has an error state, you can actually export that out without problems. So it still will, if I have this selected, it'll still prevent me from exporting an error state, but I can export anything that's not an error state. All right, moving on to the renumber tool. Let me pull this up. So inside the settings here, there's a couple enhancements around single numbering and common numbering. So single numbering is just a simple checkbox. This will just prevent items from getting numbered again. It just builds it into the rule. Common numbering is going to be when you want identical numbers based on something about the element. So I have a couple of examples here. I'll use the hanger one to start. So in this rule here, I have basically evolve hangers selected in my element filter, and I'm using the evolve configuration ID as my common numbering parameter. So this works really well because this parameter evolve is calculating in the background based on the options made in the trapeze, so that your 24-inch wide trapeze with 3-foot rods, you know, are all the same thing. They all will end up with the same configuration ID. So it's a parameter that can identify what's the same. So by using it here, when I run this tool, anything that's the same gets the same number. I think I actually have a view with this is ran, and you can kind of see, let's see, hangers. Yeah. So this is used on with the numbering tool, and you'll see, you know, H6, same trapeze, different number, but all the ones that are same get the same number. In addition, so you can see that I have one for configuration, another one for length and width. This is for, I think, the duck bank templates. So I just made a simple one for using 2 parameters to calculate it. Probably not completely what you want for that example, but again, I just wanted to show the concatenation of parameters. This will look at both of these. The other option is you can actually go and use PowerShell to get something even more, a little more sophisticated with the common numbering. There is an example included where we're evaluating, I think I did strut or conduit, which is greater than 10 feet. I don't know if this is an applicable example, but it was something to say how, you know, why would I use PowerShell to do this? Well, here I'm evaluating length, and I'm saying anything that's greater than 10, use a common number, so that in theory, that's a full length thing, and I could number it the same. Again, you know, circumstances will come up where this may be applicable, but it's there. Most of the times you probably can just use parameters. The other option with renumbering is within your spool settings or your for creating assemblies. So you have renumbering spools when modified, and you have some options here to run those rules when creating spools. So you can trigger those rules when you're spooling as well. All right, moving on. So regarding sheet creation, there's a few things we did here. Let me jump to the family because that's going to be where you'll really see it. So we made some enhancements to the view window family, which defines your views or schedules that you create. And this is going for any sheet creation utility like spools, packages, or locations. So all three of those features create sheets and views. What we did is we consolidated the window. So now it's just one family that you need. The family basically just merged all the options that they had. There's a lot of duplicate options there. So the main thing is you have your standard views here and your assembly views down here. So obviously for spooling, that only will be the only tool that's using assembly views. But what you can actually do now is create standard views and assembly views together when spooling. So this has come up a lot where, you know, I'm spooling, let me go to a plan view. I'm spooling something over here, say this panel or something, and maybe I want the grid line or the wall to show up in a spool view. So the way you would set that up is within your spool title block, you would create one, you create your assembly views, but you could also come in here and say, I want, a standard 3D view. So when it's creating a standard 3D view, you basically get what the view template gives you as far as what's visible. So it is a way to kind of mix and match, and that would only be applicable for spooling, obviously. Packages only uses standard views, just like locations. Now for standard views, one of the enhancements we made is you can actually use elevation views. I did set up a title block in this project to show an example of that. I think this was the example I did. So for an electrical room, you know, common drawings you're making is a plan view of your equipment or multiple plan views. Then you want to get elevation views of all the walls. So you could kind of set up a title block to generate something like this automatically using elevation views. A couple of other things to note in the family. You can now define your detail number for your view. So if this view is always 1, this one's 2, this one's 3, etc., you can write those numbers into this field, and that's the number that will be used when the view gets placed on your sheet. The other option here is a scale to fit option. So this determines whether or not the scale to fit the view. You'll see some overlap with this in locations. So we're going to do a few more things to clean up with how we create views and sheets. The goal is going to be to standardize it across those functions. So your settings and options and all that are all the same. They can be different across features, but the way you do it, what you look at, the UI and all that stuff are all the same. So there's a few more things we're going to do there, but just know that the option is in the family now. The other thing, just on the family itself, what you'll notice is if you start putting it into some error states, there's going to be more visual indicators that say something's wrong. It turns red, gives you an error. Even in the family itself, it's displaying some text. There's something, multiple selections made. So kind of helps from a user perspective, visually being able to see what you're going to get. All right. So that's pretty much for for sheet creation. Oh, so the question here, will 6.0 view window still work with the 6.02 release, or do we have to incorporate the new one? So the answer is you don't have to change anything. You don't have to use these families. We've maintained backwards compatibility. So everything you have to date will still work, no problems. There's no need to change anything. Again, this is just kind of an enhancement to that. If you want to go this route, you can, but it will not have any negative impact. So good question. All right, let's see. Jump back to my project here. So a couple of minor enhancements to grids. One thing you'll notice, let me go to my find elements feature here. As an example, this is where I think it comes into play. Let me do this. So now within the grid states dialog, you have this enable sum count function. Basically just displays quantities when you group. So I will enable that, and then I'll say, let me group this by evolve description. And where is my count here? Hold on. This. Is it off view here? Why am I not seeing it? Maybe some count. All right, I'm not sure why I'm not seeing here, unless it just doesn't apply here, but what am I missing? Let me do it somewhere else, just so I know I'm not crazy. Let's do it here. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing this right now. I'm missing something. But what the feature does is it'll display a count value for your grouping. So in this case, I have 7. It'll just display a 7. So small little enhancement to a grid. I'm not sure why mine's not working right now. The other thing is bulk update was added just to a few things that were missing. One thing to note about like a bulk update, let's just say you had, some coloring rules and you want to enable these or disable them. You can use bulk update to do that. Just come into here, say enable, yes, apply. It'll check all the boxes. So always look at the bulk update when doing, obviously, bulk editing. It's a great tool to have for any grid changes. All right, so for hanger placement, there's a few options or a couple options here that have been added for the collision detection. You can turn off collision detection completely because you have both collision detection and then collision adjustment. So the detection is just that. It'll highlight hangers that are in clash. The adjustment will actually try to move the hanger itself. So you can disable those completely. And then I think there's a distance from union option here. So when placing hangers and coming across couplings, you can set how far back a hanger will be from a coupling. Another enhancement here is, let's see, where would this come into play? Let's do define spool. Okay, you'll notice there's like another third little button in the upper right on some of the dialogues, which is a quick link to our selection configurator. Now, the selection configuration is not new itself, but it's kind of like this hidden little settings that many people didn't know about. So if you go to your utilities settings, there was this selection config. What this allows you to do is modify what elements get filtered out of a selection. So I'll do an example of spooling. So say if I wanted to make a spool and I'm able to select hangers right now. But let's say I never wanted to put hangers in a spool, and I struggle I struggle with not selecting them, right? I don't want to make a filter and hide them or whatever. What I can do is modify my selection config and say, okay, for spooling here, I'm going to modify this, and you'll see this is currently what's available. I'm just going to shut off conduit fittings completely, just as this example. So I don't want to spool conduit fittings. So now when I come into here, you'll see I make this window selection. I can't select those anymore. Obviously, you don't want to be so broad with something like that. Conduit fittings would not be something you turn off. But most people weren't aware that you had this ability. So we put a kind of a quick icon button there so you can access it. Also, you'll notice the button itself is black. That indicates there's been a change to it. So if I come to my spool and I reset to my default, it goes back to a white. So again, just kind of bringing visibility to the tool that's there. That's the intent. It's not a tool you're meant to really constantly change, a set it and forget it type thing, but just know that that's available. Question, does hanger collision work with imported Navisworks? Currently, no. The collision detection is only against Revit elements, so linked models, that type of thing, not NWC files currently. I think that's pretty much it. Couple of the last thing I guess that's on this list is we cleaned up the modify buttons. We basically added any feature that allows pre-selection to be displayed. So that's in there. And yeah, so the last thing I want to cover, again, if there's any questions on things I went over, we got another 10 minutes or so. I'll be glad to go back if needed. Just post your question and we'll look at it. But the last thing I want to look at for this sample model are some of the reports that are available. Let me pull up, I forget which ones are new. Oh, hold on. Let me get this question first. Okay, so not a question, but basically it's saying here, we'd like to export option for views and sheets, but it would be great if we can be able to export the NWCs from Evolve Foresight without having to open the Revit model. Yeah, so that's something we can certainly look into. Thanks for posting it. All right, so what do I want to look at? Let's look at a BOM, for example, here. So one of the things we've added to a lot of these schedules are more robust filtering. The idea is basically trying to think of any way you would want to filter a list, provide that filtering option inside this report. So what you'll start seeing are things like group by location or by container. When you see container, it's referring to packages and spools. So I could just say, I just want to see my spools, and I can come in here and just say, oh, these 3 spools are what I want to see. And then it filters it down and gives me a listing by spool. So I can do the same thing for packages. I could also do it by locations as well. So that's in there. Another really cool one is our in-wall report here. So in our project template, there's probably like 3 or 4 schedules that are set up to work with that automated, or what we call an auto route family. It's that generic looking family that you can cable with. So again, what we can do here is we have different report types. So here's just a total BOM of those elements. Maybe I just want to see my assemblies. So I can get that broken down. I can do my same grouping by location or room. Um, a pretty cool thing here is I can actually display an image. So I'll do this. This image is reading an image file. So all that is required is that the image file, let me go find it and show you how it's set up. That image file just has to match the naming of the assembly. So in theory, you could just make image files for your assemblies, and they would show up in this report. So you'll see in this model, I have a D1 assembly and a D1 image. So the report is just pulling whatever is visible here. And you could certainly do page breaks on here. Page break. Maybe that's a separate page break for expanded one. But yeah, so bunch of options here for this one. This is really cool. I really like this just because it's got the dynamic images, makes it more flexible. And this could be an easier way to report out in Wall Rough. Something else to note as a future enhancement is the ability to start grabbing more information from data tables and start cross-referencing multiple data tables. What we're going to be able to use that for is potentially capturing like ancillary data for assemblies, items that you're not modeling, but you still want to report on. There's going to be some other examples that we're going to set up to show what you can do with it. Be definitely a complex thing to set up. But when we have an example, I think it'll make sense. I think we did an update to conduit bends. I forget what the last report looked like. But now you can do a selection by bend type. Again, you can do the locations, and also you can do by conduit type, diameter, or even bender type. So you can basically customize, you can make a different report for each bender by size or something like that. We have been getting some feedback on these reports. So, if you want to see an enhancement to these things, please share it. Depending on what you're looking for, oftentimes the feedback is, for example, give me another filter for this. We've been trying to add this stuff in. The goal is to get these things fairly usable right out of the box, because building these reports is going to be complicated for most. So we're hoping that we can provide these reports and they work really well. On that same note, I don't know if this was part of it, but this logo here is also dynamic, just like that other images were on the InWall report. So you'll see there's a logos folder, and there's a file here as well that you could just swap out with your company logo. So I think that was pretty much it. I'll give it a minute or two. If anybody has any other questions, please post them. One thing that's worth mentioning. So I've added this equipment profile as an example. Let me load this. So the idea behind this was what I wanted to see is basically I want to see all my equipment that's modeled, and I wanted to look at the status of it with the submittal. All the equipment that we have those little check boxes that you can check for approved or not approved, and then also compare it to my run schedule to make sure my equipment's in there. So you'll see there's two fields here where some of these items are coming in as scheduled and model, and then some items, are coming in not in schedule. So if we look into this profile, you'll see what we're doing here. For the model check field, I'm using PowerShell to look at my same data table that the wire fill report is looking at. And I'll go back to this and what that is. But basically, I'm looking up a data table and just seeing if it exists. If that panel name or the equipment ID matches, the start or finish field, then I know that it's in my model. The submittal parameter here is, again, just looking at that parameter and basically saying, if it's yes, it's approved. If it's not yes, it's not approved. So again, simple, uh, simple little scripts that you can throw in there, but visually provides some pretty good information. So the data table that I referred to is basically opening up your run schedule and exporting it from the grid here to a data table. So I can just do export to data table, select it, hit OK, and it'll update it based on this list. It's a manual process, but the data's here, and it's just a way to kind of compare the data. And I mentioned the enhancement to the data tables and the reports. One of the things we should be able to do soon is not only compare what is modeled, but provide a listing of things that are not modeled. So right now, this is just displaying, any of the equipment that's in the model. But let's just say my run schedule has panel, A1, but I don't have it in my model. I wouldn't really know that. You'd have to look to see if it's missing from the list, but we can provide hopefully better visibility into those scenarios. So yeah, I guess there's no other questions, but that's the 6.2 update. And anybody has any issues that come up or any questions, please reach out to us and we'll try to help you out.
Thank you so much, everyone, for attending the webinar today. We'll be following up in an email with the recording. And make sure you're following us on LinkedIn and our other social medias to keep up with the upcoming webinars. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.